Huge move in the S&P today, up 2.05%, closing at 5921.54. The market gapped up this morning and just continued trending higher throughout the day, closing on the highs of the day. We still have the largest gamma exposure concentration at the 6,000 strike. If you've been watching our YouTube videos for the last several weeks, we've been highlighting this level, and it appears we are attempting once again to approach that 6,000 strike. Zooming out on the daily candlestick chart, we can get a little bit of a clearer picture. We can see these highs, which got nearly as high as 6,100 back in January and early part of February before ultimately failing. This time we appear to be approaching 6,000 as the first level, but we can see gamma exposure is growing at these higher strikes between 6,000 all the way up to 6,400. This is something we were talking about in our live stream this morning, which, by the way, you can sign up right through YouTube if you want to join 10:30 a.m. and it is archived if you want to view it later. And so we are watching this gamma exposure growing at these higher strikes, and this is going to be a really interesting zone between 6,000 and 6,100 if we continue seeing bullish momentum up to those levels. Will we consolidate at those levels and push higher, or will we see a rejection with dealer selling pressure kicking in? That's something that we're going to have to watch as more gamma exposure grows at these higher strikes. The likelihood for a move higher above 6,000 is going to increase with the effects of dealer selling pressure lessening at that 6,000 strike. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and we analyze all of this in depth, both in our community Discord and in our live stream. I'll put links in the description below for you guys to check that out.
Thanks, Anthony. Friday, we were looking for IWM to continue lower to that 200 strike, which was a very large GEX cluster, was and still is, as you can see here. And we touched that, and we had some early bullish signs when we touched 196 in the pre-market, and then rocketed higher pretty much starting from that pre-market session right through the cash session. So it seems to have been a good precursor to what we saw with SPX and QQQ today. And IWM also saw follow through. And in fact, as you can see on my chart, IWM stopped basically right at the whole moving average, just 18 cents below it. So I would consider that a fairly natural area for resistance. But if we look at the GEX picture and we also look at the volume today, most signs seem to be pointing higher. And we did see GEX grow in the positive direction. We see 210, which is now larger GEX cluster than it was Friday. And we even see some GEX at prices up to 230. And I think 220 in particular saw high volume today. And with the Keltners pointing up and price, even if we get a breather here right at the hole, I wouldn't be surprised to see IWM continue higher given the shift we've seen in the GEX picture after touching 200.
Thanks, Sean. Next, let's take a look at a few names in particular. Let's start with Tesla, up nearly 7% today, closing at 362.89. In a previous YouTube video, we described the consolidation that had been going on in Tesla over the last couple of weeks. We do seem to have been breaking out of that zone in this afternoon's trading session. The largest gamma exposure is at the 400 strike, and we actually took a trade in one of our portfolios, which we posted to our members, a trade taking advantage of this breakout, aiming for a move higher into this 350 to 400 zone. We're going to give it a little bit of time to play out, but this looks like a pretty interesting setup from a risk reward perspective. By the way, you can follow along with all the trades that we're making in our own portfolio in real time by becoming a member. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys to check that out. But in terms of timing on this particular idea, we see gamma exposure across the spectrum in Tesla. Most of the GEX at the 400 strike is concentrated in the June 20th expiration. We also see quite a bit at 380 in the August 15th expiration. So our bet is that over the next couple of months, Tesla is going to attempt to make a move up towards that 400 strike. The most likely probability is going to be by June 20th. And so that's the kind of analysis that we do using gamma exposure. And this 3D gamma exposure surface model actually helps us to be able to pick our strikes and target these GEX concentrations out in time.
Thanks, Anthony. As we're looking at the market doing a little better today, I wanted to look at some potential laggards in the NASDAQ that might play catch up, even if this rally is not long lasting. And so I have Apple pulled up, AAPL, as most of you know. And you can see I have the historical GEX picture, and this shows us the net GEX for Apple across a specific time frame. And you can see we went from negative GEX Friday to positive almost 50 million today. So that is a positive shift. You can see it hasn't really gone anywhere since early April when it made its low and had that immediate reactive rebound. And so it's really been lagging as Microsoft and other Magnificent Seven names have gone from the lower Keltner channel all the way to the top. So I'm eyeing Apple as a potential rotation play if the NASDAQ does well for a few more days. And we see GEX at higher levels. In fact, the upper dealer cluster zone, where we would expect dealers to become potential sellers, is all the way up at 230. So definitely the upside seems to outweigh the downside risk with Apple right now.
Thanks, Sean. Next, I want to take a look at CrowdStrike. This is a name we've traded several times in our portfolio over the past year. It made a big move today, up 3.65%, closing at 472.22. We've been watching this area right around the 450 level on CrowdStrike for the past week or so, eyeing a potential breakout, which appears to have come over the last couple of trading sessions. The gamma exposure data is showing positive GEX all the way up to the 500 strike. I will note that there are earnings on, I believe it's June 3rd, so that is something to be aware of. We lose a little bit of our edge using GEX when it comes to earnings because there's that additional uncertainty in the earnings release. So what I'm looking to do is wait for earnings to come out on June 3rd, assess the gamma exposure data at that point in time, and then potentially look to put on a play heading into the monthly July OPEX. With options, there are a ton of different ways to make money, and so you don't always have to capture the big move. You can do a premium collection strategy, something like an iron condor or an iron butterfly or a diagonal, and allow yourself the ability to capture premium as price fluctuates around major GEX concentration levels. So in the case of CrowdStrike, if we do miss a big earnings move, there are still other ways to play it, and we'll assess the gamma exposure picture at that time. But currently, overall on CrowdStrike, market participants do appear to be ultra bullish, positioning for a move potentially up to the 500 strike and beyond.
Anthony, my last one today is going to be Meta. And let's take a quick look at our Discord server where we shared Meta as a trade idea recently. And actually, this was just on the 21st, so barely even a week ago. We locked in a nice profit on puts that we sold. We based this trade on what we were seeing with the GEX picture and selling puts, on the brief weakness that we saw. But as we flip back to the chart today, we still see opportunity. And I'll point out a couple of things to keep in mind. We did see net GEX grow today in the positive direction, so that's a positive. And the Keltners are pointing sharply higher. This to me signals that Meta has potential to go higher even based on the chart alone. But if we look at GEX, which adds to my confidence, we have this huge GEX cluster at 700. Now I looked at our 3D map and it shows that most of that 700 GEX is clustered around the June 20 timeframe, so less than a month from now. We also see some GEX as high as 750 and even 800. I'm not going to get too wild at this stage counting or waiting on that, but it would be nice to see what would be a fairly large move to go from 642 up to the 700 area. I have a little bit of short-term caution about being below the whole moving average at 650. We could very easily hit 650 or even surpass it a little bit, see a pullback again, and then take off from there to achieve that 700 target. So it's all a matter of time frame. It wouldn't be surprising to see a fake out to the downside before Meta goes up to hit this target. And a month can seem like a long time in the trading world. So we'll see how it plays out.
And it's not too late to take advantage of our special promotion. You can get $300 off our yearly portfolio manager tier subscription. Use code May2025 at checkout. We have a few spots remaining and the month of May is wrapping up, so take advantage of it while you can. Our members get full access to our gamma exposure dashboard, our algorithmic trading strategies, as well as our community Discord. We have a ton of great traders sharing their own trade setups and strategies in our Discord community. You can also follow along in real time as we trade and manage our own portfolios as well. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys to check that out. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.